In homesteading, the best food isn't always planted on purpose. Today we're meeting purslane, a common yard weed that turns urban foraging into real food security. This wild edible weed is rich in omega-3 fatty acids, but only if you can identify it safely, cook it smart, and manage oxalates. Stay with me. This is Plant Once, Harvest Forever for your survival garden starting this season. Does purslane grow in your area? Drop a simple yes or no. We're building a community field map, and your note really matters. Look first at the way it spreads. Real purslane usually hugs the ground and radiates outward in a low mat, almost like it's trying to cover bare soil. The stems creep instead of standing upright, and new branches keep fanning out close to the surface. That ground-hugging habit is your first clue when you're doing foraging or urban foraging, because many other wild greens don't grow with that same calm, sprawling pattern. Now move to the leaves. This is where purslane identification becomes simple. The leaves are thick and smooth, succulent-like, and they look slightly glossy in sunlight. They're oval to spoon-shaped with rounded tips. When you gently pinch one, it should feel fleshy, not thin or papery. If the leaves look sharp, delicate, hairy, or brittle, slow down. With wild edible weed finds, close enough is not a safe strategy. Check the stems next. Purslane stems are juicy and flexible, sometimes green with a pink or reddish tint. They bend easily and feel moist when snapped. In contrast, many lookalikes feel drier or more rigid. If you have blooms, you may see tiny yellow flowers that open in bright sun, but don't depend on flowers. This plant can be identified safely even when it isn't blooming. Now the most important safety checkpoint, spurge versus purslane. Take a small stem and break it gently. Purslane typically shows clear, watery sap. Many spurge lookalikes release white, milky latex. If you see milky sap, stop immediately. Don't taste it. Don't test it. Just treat it as a hard no and wash your hands. That one rule protects people who search edible weeds and try to copy what they saw online. One more principle for homesteading and real food security: never rely on a single trait. Stack clues, growth habit, leaf thickness, stem texture, and sap until you're confident. If you're not 100% sure, it's not food today. Take a photo, cross-check with multiple local sources, and come back to it. Botanical name, Portulaca oleracea. Once you can identify purslane safely, then we'll talk about why it's associated with omega-3 fatty acids, how to cook it smartly, and how to grow it cleanly so it becomes reliable free food for your survival garden and your forgotten crop system. When we step back and look at purslane through a homesteading lens, the headline is not hype. The headline is resilience. This is one of those forgotten crops hiding in plain sight, a wild green that thrives with almost no help, turning a neglected corner of soil into something edible. Now, about the omega-3 conversation. Purslane is unusual among edible weeds because it can be relatively rich in omega-3 fatty acids for a leafy plant, especially ALA omega-3, which is the plant-based omega-3 form. That matters if we are building a survival garden where easy greens and food security are the priority. But we also want to be precise. ALA is not the same thing as the EPA and DHA found in fatty fish. Our bodies can convert some ALA into those forms, but the conversion is limited and varies from person to person. So we do not frame purslane as a replacement for fish, and we do not frame it as a miracle. We frame it as a smart, accessible upgrade to the everyday plate. This is why purslane shows up again and again in traditional Mediterranean diet patterns and in older food traditions across different regions. It is the kind of plant people used because it was there, it was tender, and it made meals stretch. In a modern kitchen, it behaves like a bright, lemony wild green that can lift soups, salads, and quick sautés. In a homesteading routine, it is also a low-input free food option that can reduce pressure on your planted beds. If you are searching for anti-inflammatory foods or heart health support, the most honest takeaway is this. Purslane can be part of a plant-based diet that includes many nutrient-dense foods. It may contribute helpful fats and compounds, but it is still food, not medicine. The real superfood advantage is practical. It is abundant, drought-tolerant, and easy to add to meals in small amounts, which makes it sustainable living in action. And because we care about real-world use, our next step is safety and preparation, so we can enjoy purslane with confidence and keep it working for the survival garden, season after season. In homesteading, real food security is not only about what we can grow. It is also about what we can eat safely, consistently, and with good judgment. Purslane, Portulaca oleracea, is a wild edible weed that can support a survival garden, but like many wild greens and edible weeds, it comes with one topic we should treat seriously: oxalates. Purslane oxalates are part of why people ask about kidney stones oxalate foods. We do not panic, and we do not pretend every body reacts the same. We simply use a smart, repeatable approach. If we have a history of kidney stones, kidney disease, or we are under medical guidance for gout or similar conditions, we keep portions modest and we check with a qualified professional. This is food education, not medical advice, and our goal is to stay safe while still learning from forgotten crops and wild edibles. Here is the practical method we can use in a clean kitchen. We blanching greens. Bring a pot of water to a steady boil. Add purslane briefly, just long enough to soften the leaves. Then lift it out and discard the water. That single step is one of the simplest ways to reduce risk, and it fits the search intent behind how to reduce oxalates without turning food into fear. After blanching, we rinse well, and we treat purslane like a supporting green, not an all-day, everyday main ingredient. Now we move outdoors, because foraging and urban foraging are where most hidden risks live. We do not harvest near roads. We do not harvest from lawns that may be treated with herbicides or pesticides. We do not harvest from unknown soils near old buildings, industrial edges, or places that might hold heavy metals. When in doubt, we walk away. Free food is only free when it is clean. The safer path is simple and powerful for a survival garden. We grow purslane intentionally. A pot on a patio. A raised bed we control. A small corner that we manage like any other crop. This is how Plant Once Harvest Forever becomes a practical system, not just a slogan. When we know the soil, we know the inputs, and we can harvest with confidence. And when we have more than we need, we think like homesteaders. We blanch, cool, and store. Food storage turns a seasonal wild green into a dependable ingredient, and that is how forgotten crops become modern resilience. Purslane only becomes real food when it actually tastes good enough to repeat, and that's where most edible weeds fail. The goal in homesteading isn't to prove a point. It's to turn a wild green into something we want to eat, again and again, so it earns a place in a survival garden and strengthens food security. Here are 3 fast, field-tested ways to make purslane work for normal people, not just hardcore foragers. First is the lemony crunch salad. Rinse purslane well, spin it dry, and chop it roughly so the stems and leaves mix evenly. Then treat it like a Mediterranean diet green: a little olive oil, a squeeze of lemon, a pinch of salt, and something that adds bite: thin sliced onion, cucumber, or even diced tomato. The trick is balance. Purslane has its own tang and a slight slick texture, so we pair it with crisp vegetables and bright acid. Add a crumble of feta or a spoon of plain yogurt if that fits your kitchen. It turns wild edible weed into a clean, refreshing bowl that feels familiar. Second is the quick garlic sauté, our favorite way to calm the slimy complaint. Heat a pan, add olive oil, then sliced garlic. Toss in purslane for a short cook, just until it softens and the stems turn glossy. Finish with salt and a squeeze of lemon or a splash of vinegar. This is where blanching greens helps, too. If you've already done a quick blanch for oxalates, the sauté becomes even cleaner in texture. Serve it as a side the way many traditional cuisines treat wild greens, mixed with eggs, folded into rice, or piled onto toast. Third is the survival move: pickle or ferment. If purslane is showing up daily, preservation turns it into free food you can reach for later. For a quick pickle, pack washed purslane into a jar with garlic and a few peppercorns, then cover with a simple brine, vinegar, water, and salt. For fermentation, use a salt brine and keep the leaves submerged until they develop a gentle tang. Either method keeps that bright, lemony character and makes purslane feel intentional, not accidental. And we keep expectations honest. Purslane can be slightly sour and sometimes a little slick. That's exactly why most cultures don't eat it alone. They mix it, season it, and pair it with crunch, acid, or heat. Once we cook it smart, purslane stops being a weed you can eat and becomes a green you actually do eat, one of the simplest forgotten crops to bring back into a modern survival crop system. Purslane isn't just a trendy superfood people discovered online. Long before modern homesteading had hashtags, this plant already lived inside real food traditions. Across the Mediterranean diet and other Old World foodways, wild greens were not a garnish. They were survival food, gathered, cooked, and respected because they showed up reliably when gardens struggled. Purslane, Portulaca oleracea, belongs to that quiet category of edible weeds that kept meals going in hard seasons. When we call it a common yard weed, we're using a modern label that often means only one thing: it's growing where a system doesn't want it. That label matters because systems shape what we value. In lawns and industrial rows, anything that self-seeds, spreads fast, and refuses to die gets treated like a problem. But in a survival garden, those exact traits can become food security. A plant that returns without being begged, one that offers free food when water is scarce, fits the logic of plant once harvest forever, even if it isn't technically a perennial crop. It's a managed resource when we choose to grow it cleanly and intentionally. And here is the scientific twist that makes purslane more than folklore. This is a drought-tolerant edible plant with an unusual strategy for surviving heat and dry air. Instead of running one simple photosynthesis playbook, purslane can shift gears to conserve water while still staying productive. That's why it shows up in places other greens fail: cracked soil, hot edges, neglected corners, and still looks alive. In the language of regenerative gardening and sustainable living, that resilience is not a gimmick. It's climate insurance. So yes, purslane is associated with omega-3 fatty acids in a plant-based form, and that matters. But the bigger point is reliability. This is wild food foraging turned into a controlled system, food sovereignty on a small scale. Now we take the story out of the sidewalk crack and into a tidy bed or a pot, where urban foraging becomes clean, repeatable, and safe. Let's set it up so this forgotten crops habit can feed us season after season, without the chaos. Purslane is not a true perennial, so we don't treat it like one. In homesteading, we treat it like a self-seeding ally that can behave like plant once harvest forever if we manage it on purpose. The cleanest method is simple. Grow purslane in pots, tubs, or a bordered bed so your survival garden stays organized and your forgotten crop system stays predictable. Give it full sun, light water, and poor soil is fine. It thrives where many crops struggle, which is exactly why it supports food security. To keep it from taking over, harvest hard before it drops seed. If we want it to return, we choose one small seed corner and let only that patch mature. Then we collect seed, label it, and store it like any other survival food plan: calm, controlled, and repeatable. We've just turned a common yard weed into a real system: identify with stacked clues, respect safety, cook it smart, and grow it clean. That is the heart of homesteading, and it's exactly why forgotten crops matter. When we can name a plant, confirm it as Portulaca oleracea, avoid dangerous lookalikes, and manage simple risks like purslane oxalates, we stop guessing and start building food security. Purslane will not replace fish, and we don't need it to. It earns its place because it is reliable green biomass, drought-tough, and surprisingly nutrient-dense for a survival garden. It also fits the plant once, harvest forever mindset through self-seeding, when we control where it lives, when it seeds, and how we harvest. If purslane grows where you live, we can turn urban foraging into clean, repeatable free food by moving it from unknown lawns into known soil, pots, bordered beds, and managed seed corners. That's how edible weeds become survival food without the drama. If you want the next homesteading field guide in our Forgotten Crops series, made the same way, with clean visuals and evidence-minded safety, subscribe to the channel and meet us in the next episode.